They were elegant, they were dangerous, and they all had one thing in common: a secret Hollywood couldn't say out loud. In an era where being openly gay could end a career, the silver screen whispered what it couldn't shout. These villains weren't just evil, they were coded. Queer desire wrapped in silk, wit, and menace. Behind every arched brow, every theatrical glare, was a truth the studios tried to hide. So what happens when repression becomes rage? Let's unlock the gay secrets of 10 unforgettable villains who turn the closet into their most powerful weapon. And kicking off this list is a woman who didn't need to scream to terrify. She didn't wave a gun. She didn't raise her voice. All Mrs. Danvers needed was silence. In Hitchcock's Rebecca, 1940, she isn't just the housekeeper. She's a living shrine to a dead woman. From the moment the new Mrs. De Winter arrives, Danvers makes it clear, this house isn't hers. It still belongs to Rebecca, and so, in a way, does Danvers herself. The most unsettling moment? Danvers slowly guiding the new bride into Rebecca's untouched bedroom. She opens drawers filled with silk lingerie, holds up a transparent nightgown with reverence, and whispers, "She was so beautiful, wasn't she?" Her voice isn't just nostalgic, it's intimate, possessive, almost erotic. She caresses Rebecca's belongings the way a lover would, her fingers trembling, her breath slow, and her eyes never leave the young woman's face. This isn't loyalty, it's obsession. Romantic, repressed, and dangerously one-sided. Later, she attempts to manipulate the new Mrs. De Winter into throwing herself from a window, not with rage, but with soft, ghostly persuasion. "If I were you," she says, "I'd jump." She doesn't scream, she doesn't shove, she simply leans in like a lover offering a final kiss before the fall. Under the Hays Code, homosexuality was banned from the screen, but Hitchcock didn't need to say it. He showed it. In every lingering touch, every jealous glance, every word left unsaid. Danvers' queerness wasn't flamboyant or loud. It was internal, tortured, weaponized. She didn't want power. She wanted to preserve a love that no one acknowledged, a love that couldn't exist in the daylight. And so she became a villain not out of evil, but out of grief. Her love for Rebecca didn't die, and the world's refusal to recognize it turned that love into poison. Was Mrs. Danvers just a bitter maid? Or a woman mourning a forbidden love the world refused to believe in? Next, a villain in a silk suit, with a pistol in one pocket and a perfumed secret in the other. Joel Cairo. He didn't walk like a criminal. He didn't talk like a threat. But in The Maltese Falcon, 1941, Joel Cairo made the air feel just a little too still, like something wasn't quite right. He steps into Sam Spade's office with a soft voice, delicate gestures, and a lavender-scented handkerchief. Played by Peter Lorre, Cairo instantly disrupts the gritty masculinity of the film noir world around him. While other men bark orders and throw punches, he tiptoes, almost apologizing for his presence. But make no mistake, he's not here for peace. In the original Dashiell Hammett novel, Joel Cairo is explicitly gay. By the time it reached the screen, the Hays Code had erased that word, but not the performance. Instead, Hollywood buried his queerness beneath mannerisms. The careful grooming, the fussy elegance, the tight, ornate suits, the slightly effeminate speech. And the audience of 1941, they got the message. But queerness in Golden Age Hollywood rarely came without a dark twist. Cairo is no innocent. He's manipulative, dishonest, and desperate for control over the priceless Falcon statue. He pulls a gun on Sam Spade with a trembling hand, only to be easily disarmed. He's ridiculed, slapped, humiliated, and yet he keeps coming back, clinging to civility as if it could protect him. There's a quiet tragedy in that. Cairo's villainy doesn't lie in brute force, it lies in deception, in performance. He plays roles to survive in a world that sees him as other. He can't fight like the rest, so he charms, bribes, and plots. And in that, he becomes a reflection of how queer men were often portrayed. Never heroic, always suspect. His queerness is used against him, not just by the world of the film, but by the film itself. He's framed as exotic, untrustworthy, effeminate, foreign, everything the American hero is not, everything he must reject. And yet Cairo endures, through shame, through insults, through violence. He survives not because he's stronger, but because he knows how to hide in plain sight. Joel Cairo was never meant to be a queer icon, but in his softness, his silence, his refusal to conform, he became one anyway. Next, a man who writes with acid ink and hides more than just a sharp tongue. Addison DeWitt. Addison DeWitt doesn't enter All About Eve like a storm. He's already been there, watching, judging, writing. He isn't the villain who tears the world down. He's the one who quietly owns it. Not with money or muscle, but with a single column read by everyone who matters. George Sanders plays him like a serpent in silk. Dry, intelligent, unshakably in control. But there's something else under the surface. Something you can't name outright. Because in 1950, Hollywood wouldn't let you. Throughout the film, Addison never flirts, never romances. His relationships aren't emotional, they're strategic. While other men fall in love or fall apart, he stays above it all. Observing, and when he finds someone worth molding, like the ambitious Eve Harrington, he doesn't seduce her, he claims her. In the film's most revealing moment, Eve begs him to keep her secrets hidden. She's desperate, frightened, and Addison, calm as ever, replies, "You're mine, you belong to me." He's not in love with her. He doesn't want to touch her. He wants to own her trajectory, her public image, her vulnerability. He doesn't desire, he controls. Everything about Addison suggests queerness without ever saying it. The cutting wit, the emotional detachment, the obsession with beauty and image, the disdain for traditional romance. He's not interested in women. He's interested in power through women. And behind his coldness is something deeply familiar to queer audiences. The survival instinct of someone who's always had to operate from the margins. In a world that couldn't accept a gay man with feelings, Addison became something else, a man with leverage. He's not here to kiss you, he's here to rewrite your ending and sign his name at the bottom. What do you think? Was Addison a brilliant manipulator or a villain born from the closet? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Next, we head to a dinner party where the hosts have just committed murder, and the tension isn't the only thing tightly wound between them. Brandon and Philip. The murder happens in the first 5 minutes. The real story is what follows. 2 men, 1 secret, and the unraveling of everything between them. In Hitchcock's Rope, 1948, Brandon and Philip strangle their friend with a rope, place his body in a chest, and then serve dinner on top of it. But the film isn't about hiding a crime. It's about hiding who they are. Brandon is the mastermind. He's arrogant, philosophical, drunk on the idea that some people deserve to kill and others deserve to die. He delivers lines about Nietzsche and superiority while swirling champagne like it's part of the ritual. But his real obsession isn't the crime. It's Philip. Philip, by contrast, is shaking. Not from fear of the law, but from fear of Brandon, or maybe fear of losing him. He snaps when someone mentions chickens being strangled. He drinks too much. He can barely play piano without his hands trembling. But he still follows Brandon's lead, still clings to him, still needs him to look back. The camera doesn't show them kissing. It shows Brandon brushing crumbs off Philip's shoulder, lighting his cigarette, whispering instructions only he is meant to hear. The power dynamic is subtle but suffocating. Brandon seduces through control. Philip collapses through longing. This isn't just a queer-coded relationship. It's a tragic portrayal of love twisted into submission. Philip doesn't kill because he believes in the idea. He kills because Brandon asks him to. That's not logic. That's love. A love that dares not speak its name. Not because it's evil, but because the world refuses to see it as anything else. What makes them villains isn't the murder. It's how the murder reveals their inability to be honest, not just with others, but with themselves. And what makes them queer icons isn't that they break the rules. It's that their intimacy has to hide behind violence to exist at all. Brandon and Philip aren't just reflections of crime. They're a mirror of what happens when desire is only allowed to exist in the shadows, and the only way to touch someone is to destroy them. Dorian Gray. When Dorian Gray walks into a room, everything stops, not because of what he says, but because of what he is. Flawless, untouched, beautiful to the point of suspicion. In MGM's The Picture of Dorian Gray, 1945, Hurd Hatfield plays Dorian like a living statue, cold, unreadable, and dangerously perfect. The story is simple. A man who stays young forever while a hidden portrait absorbs the ugliness of his sins. But what the camera won't say out loud, the subtext screams. This isn't just a story about vanity. It's about queerness, repression, and the kind of desire that could only survive in shadows. Dorian isn't interested in women. Not really. He charms them, flirts with them, but never connects. His real fascination lies with Lord Henry, the older man who corrupts him with philosophy, endless attention, and a strange, lingering intimacy. They don't touch. They don't need to. The camera does all the work, locking on their faces, drawing out their conversations, bathing them in soft, almost sensual light. The portrait becomes more than a supernatural object. It's a metaphor for Dorian's secret self, the part of him that does feel, does want, does sin. The more he denies it, the uglier the painting gets. And the more he maintains his perfect mask, the more rotten he becomes inside. At one point, he abandons a woman who falls in love with him. She kills herself. Dorian barely reacts, not because he's heartless, but because he's disconnected from everything real. He's not allowed to feel, not allowed to love. And so he destroys. He doesn't become a monster because he's queer. He becomes a monster because queerness in his world must be buried so deep. It poisons him. There's a reason critics today read Dorian Gray as a gay tragedy. His portrait isn't just aging, it's rotting under the weight of denied desire, internalized shame, and performative perfection. He is everything society told queer men to be: polished, controlled, desirable, and utterly hollow. The real horror of Dorian Gray isn't magic. It's what happens when someone is forced to smile while slowly erasing who they are. Waldo Lydecker. Waldo Lydecker doesn't enter Laura like a suspect. He enters like a narrator, suave, composed, and soaking in his own legend. He tells us this is his story, and in a way, it is. Played with biting precision by Clifton Webb, Lydecker is a wealthy columnist who bathes in antiques and Mozart, crafting sentences as sharp as scalpels. He's elegant, intelligent, and deeply offended by anything that disrupts his carefully ordered world, including love, especially heterosexual love. His fixation on Laura, the beautiful, ambitious young woman whose murder opens the film, isn't romantic in the traditional sense. It's obsessive, controlling. He doesn't want to hold her, he wants to curate her, like one of the rare collectibles in his apartment. Throughout the film, we learn how deeply he's embedded himself in her life, shaping her career, managing her friendships, undermining her relationships. When she falls for another man, Detective Mark McPherson, Lydecker's calm exterior starts to crack. The contempt in his voice grows sharper. The jealousy shifts from icy wit to something almost feral. There's a scene where McPherson leans close to Laura, and Lydecker watches with quiet rage. He doesn't interrupt, he simmers. Because this isn't just about losing a friend, it's about losing control over the one beautiful thing he thought belonged to him. And here's where the queerness creeps in. Lydecker isn't coded as flamboyant or camp, he's coded as precise, cultured, fastidious, sexless, yet territorial. His disdain for McPherson, rugged, masculine, instinctive, isn't just class-based, it's gendered, it's sexual. He loathes him the way a closeted man might loathe the world that gets to live out loud while he watches in silence. Under the Hays Code, they couldn't show queerness directly, but they didn't need to. Lydecker is all repression and poison. The man who kills, not out of madness, but out of a love he never dared confess. And Clifton Webb, a lifelong bachelor known for his elegance and rumored sexuality, pours himself into the role with chilling restraint. He doesn't overplay, he whispers, he embodies. Waldo Lydecker isn't just a villain. He's a man destroyed by desire he was never allowed to name. Dr. Pretorius, he doesn't look like a villain. He looks like he just stepped out of a queer salon in 1890s London. Silk cravat, thin mustache, eyes full of mischief. But what Dr. Pretorius wants is far more subversive than style. In Bride of Frankenstein, 1935, Dr. Pretorius doesn't kill anyone. He doesn't even raise his voice. Instead, he whispers, manipulates, and redefines the very idea of creation. Played by the openly flamboyant Ernest Thesiger and directed by James Whale, one of Hollywood's few openly gay directors at the time, Pretorius isn't just a mad scientist. He's a coded queer force of disruption. When he meets Frankenstein, he doesn't plead for help. He seduces. He flatters Henry, invites him to dine in a crypt filled with candles, raises a toast to a new world of gods and monsters. He proposes creating life without women, and insists on building a mate not for Henry, but for the creature they made together. He shows off tiny, living homunculi, including a flamboyant king and a flirtatious queen, all stored in bell jars like collectibles. It's absurd, theatrical, almost drag-like, and it's no accident. Pretorius doesn't represent science, he represents queerness, creativity without permission, desire without apology. He mocks heteronormativity at every turn. "Leave the carnal house and join the charade," he seems to say, as he leads Frankenstein away from his wife and back into the laboratory. His chemistry with the monster? More emotionally charged than any other connection in the film. He calls the creature "my friend," calms him with gentle words, and treats him with a tenderness no one else shows. He isn't evil in the traditional sense. He's dangerous because he represents something taboo, a man who creates outside the rules of nature, morality, and society. A man who doesn't believe in sin, only possibility. In a time when gay men had to hide behind subtext and shadows, Dr. Pretorius became something unthinkable, a queer-coded villain who enjoyed himself. He didn't hate the world for rejecting him. He laughed at it and built his own instead. Sir Humphrey Pangolin. Sir Humphrey Pangolin is a magistrate, a man of wealth, a man of words. And in Jamaica Inn, 1939, he is also, unmistakably, a man unraveling in silk. Played with unsettling flamboyance by Charles Laughton, Pangolin isn't your typical Hitchcock villain. He doesn't creep, he performs. Every gesture is theatrical, every word over-enunciated. He totters around in rich fabrics, quoting poetry and relishing the sound of his own voice, even as he arranges shipwrecks, smuggling rings, and cold-blooded murder. The queerness isn't stated. Of course not in 1939, but it's coded into everything. He never shows romantic interest in women. He lives alone in a mansion full of mirrors and fine upholstery. His eyebrows arch higher than any villain's conscience. His physicality, exaggerated, stylized, resembles a drag caricature of authority. And when he touches another man's shoulder just a little too long, you feel it. You see what Hollywood couldn't say. There's a moment where he watches the young heroine Mary with a bizarre fascination, not with desire, but with disapproval, as if her purity offends him, as if her presence threatens the secret order he's crafted in the shadows of Cornwall. Laughton's portrayal was so dominant, he reportedly rewrote entire scenes to spotlight his character. Hitchcock, frustrated by the actor's indulgence, later distanced himself from the film. But ironically, it's Laughton's flamboyant madness, his off-kilter brilliance, that makes the movie memorable. It's less about plot and more about Pangolin unraveling like a decaying aristocrat in denial. And that's what makes him powerful. He doesn't just represent villainy, he represents the failure of the mask, the respectability that crumbles under queerness repressed for too long. Whether intentional or not, Pangolin is a symbol of queerness hidden behind titles, of rot behind velvet curtains. And in that, he joins a long tradition of villains whose true crime wasn't just greed or betrayal, but difference. A difference that classic Hollywood taught audiences to fear, even as it dressed it in silk and poetry. Bruno Anthony. Bruno Anthony doesn't just stroll into strangers on a train, he glides with a gaze too intense, a suit too perfect, and a plan too intimate. Played with unnerving charm by Robert Walker, Bruno is a killer with silk gloves and a fixation. He meets tennis star Guy Haines on a train and, within minutes, proposes a murder swap. "I kill your wife, you kill my father." It's casual, it's deranged, and it's dripping with homoerotic tension. Bruno isn't just a sociopath, he's obsessed with Guy. From the way he leans in too close, to the way he fingers Guy's lighter like a keepsake, every interaction is charged with something more than crime. When Guy rebuffs him, Bruno doesn't just feel rejected, he spirals like a spurned lover. He watches Guy play tennis with laser focus. He shows up at Guy's matches in the front row, dressed to the nines, smiling possessively. Under the constraints of the production code, homosexuality couldn't be spoken. But Hitchcock knew how to speak in silence. He reportedly guided Walker to play Bruno with subtle femininity, soft voice, elegant hands, and a flair for theatrics. He's vain, fashionable, unmarried. He lives with his mother and wears a pinky ring. In 1951, none of that was neutral. Critics at the time didn't say it aloud, but queer viewers saw it. Bruno wasn't just coded, he was burning under the surface. There's no romantic payoff, there's no declaration of love. But Bruno's obsession with Guy is emotional, physical, and unrelenting. When he feels Guy slipping away, he threatens, stalks, and ultimately tries to destroy him. Not out of logic, but heartbreak. And that's the danger. Bruno's queerness isn't villainous because he's gay. It's villainous because it's denied, repressed, and weaponized. He's not just a man who kills, he's a man who wasn't allowed to feel. Today, Bruno Anthony stands as one of the most iconic queer-coded antagonists in film history. Not because he said "I love you," but because he never could. Do you think Bruno's obsession crossed the line from coded queerness to something darker? Let us know what you see in his gaze. Obsession, heartbreak, or something else entirely? Harry Powell, every list needs a final chill. And Harry Powell delivers it with a whisper and a knife. In The Night of the Hunter, 1955, Robert Mitchum plays one of the most haunting villains ever captured on film. Harry Powell isn't just a murderer, he's a self-proclaimed preacher with love and hate tattooed across his knuckles and a burning hatred for desire, especially when it comes to women. He marries a widow only to condemn her on their wedding night, refusing intimacy, shaming her for lust, and eventually murdering her with righteous cruelty. But here's where it turns. Powell's disgust for women isn't just religious. It feels personal. His voice trembles with revulsion. His body recoils at her touch. His purity is performative, a shield for something he cannot confront. Critics have long argued that Powell's violence is a reaction to his own repressed sexuality. He shows no genuine desire for women. His obsession with innocence, purity, and young boys, especially the son of the widow, is loaded with unspoken tension. There's a scene where he strokes the boy's hair as he talks about keeping evil away. The camera lingers, the air thickens. You realize this isn't just about religion. It's about denial turned lethal. Director Charles Laughton, who was rumored to be gay himself, layered the film with ambiguity. Shadows swallow faces. Language dances around real meaning. Powell's sermons feel like confessions, with the volume turned down. He condemns sin, but can't name the one inside himself. What makes Harry Powell terrifying isn't just the murder, it's that he's a man fighting demons he can't name and taking others down with him. His queerness isn't flamboyant, coded, or camp. It's buried, twisted, weaponized through faith, shame, and blood. And that's what leaves the mark. He's not just a villain, he's a cautionary tale of what happens when society teaches you that your desires are evil and your only salvation is control. And so, a final reminder that in classic Hollywood, queerness didn't disappear. It just slipped into the shadows. And sometimes, those shadows killed. These villains weren't dangerous because they were queer. They were dangerous because they lived in a world that told them their truth was a threat. Classic Hollywood may have buried these stories beneath style and shadows, but today we see them for what they really were. Reflections of a society too afraid to say the word, but still obsessed with its power. If this video helped you see old films through a new lens, drop us a like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe for more hidden stories from the silver screen, because sometimes the coded ones say the most.